Hello and welcome. In this video, I wanted to take a look at a Nephilim list for the Necron forces, as the Necrons have experienced quite a lot of changes going into the new chapter approved within the 9th edition. The Necrons saw quite a few different points drops, an improvement to how their protocols work, and a further expansion of which units are considered core. This has left the Necrons in a very healthy place, and they've been doing rather well within tournaments. As always, don't forget that just because this is a tournament list does not mean it's one you can't play casually and have a lot of fun with, so do keep that in mind, and remember to always have fun because that's the point of playing this game. Anyway, to begin with, this list placed first out of 117 players, and it was piloted by a player named Nathaniel Bjorg, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name in any way. This was played in the tournament known as Show Me Showdown, hosted on July 9th through 10th in Missouri. And this list is actually a very interesting one, so let's dive right into it and see what it included. To begin with, this list is composed of 3 different detachments, and the first detachment is a patrol detachment. This patrol detachment has a custom dynasty of Relentlessly Expansionist and Eternal Conquerors, meaning that this dynasty gives a 6-inch pregame move and gives all of its units objective secured. This is a very standard style of dynasty for the Necron forces, and one that is very popular both in a casual and competitive sense. Now to begin with, this patrol detachment starts off with its first HQ choice being a Catacomb Command Barge. This Catacomb Command Barge is armed with a Gauss Cannon and a Resurrection Orb. However, this Command Barge has been given a relic, and the relic has been given replaces that Resurrection Orb with an Orb of Eternity, giving it much more ability to resurrect units when activating that relic. Following the Command Barge is a second HQ choice. This second HQ choice is a Chronomancer. In this case, the Chronomancer has not been given any upgrades, and that makes sense due to the new command point changes that we saw within this chapter approved. The one thing I'll mention is that Necrons didn't have the best Warlord traits and relics, so their utilization of command points was always rather low, though now it seems like it's gone even lower. This does open up the ability for Necrons to have multiple detachments instead of those relics and traits that other armies might rely on. And if they still choose to have a single detachment, they will start the game off with more command points than other armies thanks to their low reliance on those traits and relics, unlike other armies. Now moving on from the HQ choice, we come to the first troop choice. The first troop choice is a rather standard unit of a small unit of 5 Immortals being armed with Gauss Blasters. This is definitely a perfectly fine choice and a great way to keep the troop choice cost low for your different patrol detachments. The elite choice, which is occupied by a single Catan Shard. This Catan Shard has been given Cosmic Tyrant as its Fractured Personality ability. The Cosmic Tyrant ability allows it to use an additional Catan power in a turn where it did not fall back or advance. This definitely increases its ability to put out those Catan powers, which can do quite a lot of damage considering that they are all mortal wound focused. As for the Catan powers this shard has been given, this shard has the Times Arrow and the Transdimensional Thunderbolt powers. The Times Arrow power allows the Catan shard to select an enemy unit within 18 inches, and if it beats that unit's wounds characteristic on a d6, a model is automatically destroyed within that unit. As for the Transdimensional Thunderbolt, the Thunderbolt has a 24-inch range, and on a 2+ on a d6 roll, the enemy unit suffers d3 mortal wounds, as well as any enemy unit within 3 inches of the target unit suffers a single mortal wound on a roll of 4+. So this is definitely a good ability to target units that are being accompanied by buff units within a short range or characters around that unit. And with these two powers combined, as well as that Cosmic Tyrant ability, this Catan Shard can put out quite a few mortal wounds while also having a rather low points cost, considering that it is not a named Catan unit. Moving along, we come to the fast attack choice for this patrol detachment. The fast attack choice includes 2 different options, the first one being a unit of 3 Scarab Swarms, which is a rather good unit for taking objectives and being just annoying on the tabletop, considering that it has a rather low profile and can be easily hidden behind terrain, making it hard for your opponent to deal with without dedicating resources to dealing with that unit specifically. And finally, the second fast attack choice of this patrol detachment is one that's rather interesting and one that hasn't seen a ton of play. This fast attack choice is a unit of 9 Tomb Blades. All of these Tomb Blades are armed with a twin Gauss Blaster, and all the Tomb Blades have been given a Shadow Loom. And the one interesting thing I want to point out about this unit is that for whatever reason, this unit has not been given any shield veins. And I wonder why that is. Is there a fear of something like grav weapons which can hurt units with a 3+ armor save, or is there some kind of oversight going on? Because you don't have to give every single model shield veins, because in the codex it says any number of models may have this upgrade given to them, and it only costs 3 points per model. More so, the total points cost of this list is 1,997, meaning that there are 3 points available to give at least one of those Tomb Blades a shield veins upgrade. And even though it's only one Tomb Blade that has it, you can allocate some damage to that model first in order to absorb some damage against certain attacks that would allow that unit to survive a little bit better in certain situations. It's a very marginal upgrade, though many times in the past I've seen units of Tomb Blades have a couple Tomb Blades with the shield veins upgrade in order to allow you to select which ones take the wounds first, and then once the ones with the upgrade die off, the rest can take the wounds as normal. Or in certain situations, you can even start with the ones with a 4+ save, and then save the ones with a 3+ save for later. Though like I said, there are certain situations where having a 3+ save is worse than a 4+ save, so maybe there was some consideration for that in mind. I don't know 100% for the reasoning, and whether it was an oversight or a conscious decision, I'm going to assume that the player probably made it as a conscious decision for whatever reason, as they did place first place within this rather large tournament. As for the Tomb Blades outside of that, they do bring quite a decent amount of firepower, and they do have a rather impressive mobility, so they can be a rather powerful unit in certain situations. Though they do see a rather limited amount of play in most situations because usually Necrons have a lot of different options and are really spoiled for different elite choices and fast attack choices. However, in this situation, it seems to have really paid off to bring those Tomb Blades as opposed to something like Canoptic Wraiths or Scorpic Destroyers. It would be really interesting to see the rationale behind this, as I do think they're a perfectly fine unit, but at times it does feel like they're a little bit less interesting than some of the other choices Necrons have available. Anyway, with that being said, that concludes the first patrol detachment for this army list. Moving on to the second patrol detachment, it has the same custom Forge World as different detachments within army lists now are required to do within match play. This second detachment begins with its HQ choice being a single Technomancer armed with a Canoptic Cloak and being given a relic of a Veil of Darkness. The Veil of Darkness is a very powerful relic that allows you to basically pick up the bearer and a Dynasty core unit that is within a short range of the bearer and teleport them anywhere onto a table that is at least 9 inches away from an enemy unit. Relics such as this tend to be very powerful regardless of what kind of army you're playing, and it's no surprise that this relic sees play in the majority of different Necron lists, and is being utilized even with a reduction of command points in a list such as this. Now moving on from the HQ choice, we come to the one and only troop choice of this second patrol detachment. The troop choice is once again a unit of 5 Immortals armed with 5 Gauss Blasters. Once again, a good way to keep points cost low on your different troop choices that you're required to take within these detachments. Though that being said, the Immortals, even in a unit of 5 of them, can definitely pack quite a good enough punch to take out certain enemy units on their own. So just because this is the minimum allowable troops that the Necrons can take, does not mean that they're by any means weak or fragile units. The Immortals are actually a pretty solid troop choice even as a unit of 5, so don't just discount them if you're only playing them in that small unit size and as a way to keep points cost low for your troop choice. Now moving on, we come to the one and only elite choice of the second patrol detachment. And as you might have guessed already, because there are 2 patrol detachments, the elite choice is most likely going to be a second Catan Shard. In this case, the Catan Shard the list has decided to include is a Catan Shard of the Deceiver. And this is a named Catan Shard, so it's going to be a little more expensive than your generic Transcended Catan. And the Deceiver has a few special abilities, being a named unit. The first of these abilities is his special Catan power, which is unique to the Deceiver. The Catan power that he has is known as Cosmic Insanity, and it can actually generate quite a lot of mortal wounds depending on what you're targeting with it. The way this power works is you essentially select an enemy unit within 12 inches, each of you roll a d6, and then you add your respective leaderships to that roll and compare your results. The amount your combined score beats theirs is the amount of mortal wounds they suffer. So against enemy units with a natively low leadership, this can actually generate quite a lot of mortal wounds. In fact, it's probably the hardest hitting mortal wound ability in the game if your opponent has a low enough leadership and you roll high enough. So all in all, this is a very powerful way to target some of those low leadership units within some of the popular armies out in the meta currently. It's also one of those abilities that can be perfectly fine against units with medium leadership, as the Deceiver does not have a particularly low leadership in himself, and as I covered in the past, there were even lists that stack different modifiers to lower enemy leadership so that you could essentially use the Cosmic Insanity ability as a bit of a nuke when combining all those different abilities by increasing your leadership and lowering your opponent's leadership. That was a very interesting list to look at back then, and I do think that's something that might see a bit of a resurgence within the new meta. Though that being said, I do think the Necrons have a lot of interesting abilities to use, so maybe they'll stay a bit of a fringe and gimmick way of playing the Necron forces. In addition to that, it seems like the flayed ones have taken a little bit of a backseat within the new meta, so they're a little less popular, and that is one of the units that has a better leadership reduction, so do keep that in mind when looking at something like the Deceiver and how you can use different leadership bonuses. Now as for the chosen Catan power, the Deceiver has been given the Sky of Falling Stars. The Sky of Falling Stars is once again quite a heavy output of mortal wounds in certain situations. The Sky of Falling Stars allows you to select up to 3 enemy units within 24 inches, and then you roll a d6, and if the roll is less than the models within the unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. There is one other stipulation on this Catan power, and that is that a 6 on this Catan power always fails. Normally it is a 1 that always fails within a roll such as this, but in this situation it's been inverted, so 1 through 5 passes and a 6 fails. Though do keep in mind, regardless of what you roll, you still have to roll lower than the number of models within that unit. Though that being said, considering you can generate up to 3d3 mortal wounds, this can actually do quite a lot of damage, and once again can generate quite a lot of mortal wounds. Now what else does the Deceiver bring to the table? Well, the Deceiver has a very interesting special ability that essentially allows you to redeploy up to 3 units at the beginning of the game. Either that, or you can even put those units into strategic reserves for no command point cost. So this really lets you position your different units, and abilities that allow you to redeploy units is incredibly powerful, oftentimes costing command points, and being rather good when utilized within different lists. So this really does allow you to position your units in order to react to how you wish to play the game, depending on how your opponent's set up, and depending on what you want to do in terms of different objectives and things such as that. So while it's not necessarily a flashy ability, the Deceiver can generate quite a lot of mortal wounds using his different Catan powers, and the ability to reposition units in order to best take advantage of how your opponent deployed will always be rather beneficial. Not only that, but the ability to put units into strategic reserves without paying command points is also nice within the new chapter approved where command points are at a premium. And with that being covered, the second patrol detachment goes to its fast attack choices, in this situation being a single fast attack choice which is composed of a unit of 3 Scarab Swarms. As mentioned before, the Scarabs are a great little unit, though one thing I would have liked to maybe have seen is maybe the inclusion of Crypto Thralls as opposed to Scarab Swarms, because the Crypto Thralls can have a little bit more utility within certain situations, and you still have those open elite slots, as well as the ability to give one of those Cryptechs the ability to be accompanied by Crypto Thralls without taking up a Force Organization slot if you so desire. Though that being said, I do understand the inclusion of Scarab Swarms over Crypto Thralls, as both of them are perfectly fine units, and many times lists will include both Crypto Thralls as well as Scarabs to utilize in different situations, as both of them kind of fill different roles. Though considering this list already includes 1 unit of Scarab Swarms, it would have been kind of interesting to see the second unit being utilized as Crypto Thralls instead. That's not to say that including Crypto Thralls is better than a second unit of Scarabs, just to say that I personally like the variety, though then again, what do I know, this player is way better than I am considering his placing within this tournament. Anyway, moving on to the last unit for the second patrol detachment. The last unit that the second patrol detachment includes is a heavy support choice, which is a unit of 6 regular destroyers. The regular destroyers do see play time to time, though they aren't as popular as the heavy destroyers, and they're a bit of a fringe unit in most cases. Though they do bring quite a lot of firepower to the table, and in a list like this, they do make a lot of sense considering that this list does not include anything like Scorpic Destroyers or Canoptic Wraiths, so they do bring some mid-range output that allows you to take out different units that you might otherwise struggle within a list like this. Considering how many shots that unit of destroyers can make, and considering the damage and the armor penetration characteristics of those shots, it's definitely no surprise that a unit like this can be included within an army such as this. And I really think this is a very interesting list so far because it takes on a very different form than Necrons normally do within tournament play. Usually we see a more melee-focused Necron list, while this one is very much more of a Necron shooting army. And that's a good thing to see because normally Necrons tended to have a little bit of difficulty when it came to that style of play, though now it seems like with the different changes, they're finally having a larger diversity of different list style builds. As I mentioned at the start, this list is composed of 3 detachments and not 2, so there's 1 more detachment to take a look at, and this last detachment is a Supreme Command detachment being composed of the Silent King. The Silent King is a very devastating unit that does a lot of work within a game and has some amazing abilities as well as the ability to generate quite a lot of output. Not only that, but the Silent King has also gained the core keyword within the last update as he is a vehicle model. And while he doesn't have a ton of interactions within this list when it comes to the core keyword, he is still a force to be reckoned with, and at 400 points he's one of the best Supreme Commands that you can have within an army when being compared to many of the other Supreme Command options out there. Not only that, but the combination of the Silent King, the Deceiver, and that Transcendent Catan Shard, and even if you want to go as far as the Catacomb Command Barge, this list does have a lot of very powerful monster units that the opponent is going to struggle fighting against, considering that not only do they have to deal with the Silent King, but they do have to deal with 2 different Catan units which still have that Necrodermis ability, as well as that Catacomb Command Barge that can be very durable in its own right. Now add on top of that the buffing of the Techomancer and the Chronomancer, as well as those big units of Tomb Blades and normal destroyers, and all of a sudden the opponent's going to be scrambling to find different ways of dealing with all of the different threats that this list is presenting. It's a very interesting list because, like I said, it takes a very different form than the majority of Necron lists that we've seen played in the past, and it has shown that it can perform very well. And while some armies are going to struggle taking multiple detachments with how the new command points work, the Necrons definitely have a much easier time of taking multiple detachments within the same army list. As you can see here, this list has taken full advantage of the different detachments that it could bring in order to bring those different Catan shards, as well as to gain that additional HQ slot and that fast attack slot. Though in reality, if it wasn't for the 2 Catans, this could have easily been merged into 1 battalion detachment, though then you would require an additional troop choice to get up to 3 troop choices, which could be a little rough on some of the different choices you've taken. So you do gain a little bit more than just 2 Catan units when taking 2 different patrols, because you do gain the ability to take 1 less troop choice, and that can play into your favor, especially when you're trying to minimize the number of troops you're taking within the list. Outside of that, I definitely think it's a very powerful list, and I think it brings a lot of interesting things to the table, as you have all of those threats in the different monster units, you're bringing more of a shooting style play for the Necrons, and you're utilizing a lot of units that weren't seeing a ton of play within 2,000 point games, and definitely does show the versatility of the new updated Necrons, and how they can really take advantage of a lot of what they've been offered. And by the way, before we conclude this video, I did want to mention that the 3rd place in this tournament was also taken by a Necron list, and that list was much more of a traditional style of Necron army, utilizing the same custom dynasty as this list did. However, that one included 3 units of Ophidian Destroyers, 3 units of Canoptic Wraiths, and from what I remember, at least 1 unit of Scorpic Destroyers, as well as some Locust Heavy Destroyers, so it's definitely a more traditional list, and it did perform rather well within the tournament as well, and had a real shot of coming in first. I just wanted to take a look at this list instead, as it had a more unique flavor to it, and it did come in first place after all. So do keep in mind that there's plenty of space for more traditional Necron lists. As we can see, even in this circumstance, a melee list performed rather comparable to a shooting list such as this. And as I mentioned, it's rather good to see all of the different varieties of Necron lists that are popping up now with all the changes they've experienced. So what do you guys think? Do you like this style of Necron list, or do you prefer more of a melee focused list with Scorpic Destroyers and other units such as that? Let me know in the comments down below, and what do you think the future holds in store for the Necron forces? Anyways, as always, thank you for watching, and as always, I want to give a big shout out to my patrons. You guys are really awesome people and really do help support the channel. In addition to that, I would like to say, if you know anyone who may benefit from this content, please do share this video with them, as it not only helps the channel, but it also helps them out as well. And if you've enjoyed the content, do subscribe and like for future videos from this channel. Thank you for watching and have a great day. Bye.